Okay, so welcome to the Academic Development Webinar Series. I will start with acknowledgement of the country. The University of New England respects and acknowledges that its people, courses, and facilities are built on land and surrounded by the sense of belonging, both ancient and contemporary, of the world's oldest living culture. In doing so, UNE values and respects the Indigenous knowledge system as a vital part of the knowledge capital of Australia. We recognize the strength, resilience, and capacity of our Aboriginal community and pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. I am from Parramatta and I'm from very beautiful, vibrant Darugland. So welcome everyone. Today we will be talking about advanced HE and fellowships and what we have at the University of New England, how we can support you. So we will start with overview of what it is, and Hank, our speaker today, will be talking about his perspective as an assessor of advanced HE applications. This session, Hank will be briefly discussing new PSF. You might know that it has the old one, which will be valid only until December this year, was developed in 2011, and now we have a new version of it. So Hank will be talking about the differences in those two, and the new version, which will be which is implemented and will be implemented from next year. And so main changes and what are the kind of things that assessors are looking for. So Associate Professor Hank Hashur, Heiser is a strategic lead educational development and in QUT. Hank is Senior Fellow of HEA and Associate Fellow Indigenous. Hank, would you tell us about these differences as well when you start talking? And also External Assessor for Griffith University's Fellowship Program. He has been academic developer since 2005 at the University of Southern Queensland, Barham Polytechnic, Bachelor Institute of Indigenous Tertiary Education, and Zhejiang Liverpool University in Shenzhou, China. He has published extensively in the field of learning and teaching in higher education, including problem-based learning into the future, and also he is also lead editor of Student Support Service, exploring impact of student engagement, experience, and learning. Just a few days ago, this book came out, isn't it, Hank?
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Virtual university book, yeah.
Yeah. So I hand over to you, Hank, and Hank's research profile. I'll be putting the link into the chat, so feel free to access that. And yeah, so over to you, Hank. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashmira, and thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me. And apologies for, I should have sent you a much shorter bio, so you didn't have to go through all that. So I'm speaking to you from Turrbal and Yaga country in Meanjin, Brisbane. So I'll acknowledge the traditional owners here as well. It's interesting in the context of this because, you know, fellowships, senior fellowships are about acknowledgement of and recognition of knowledge, right, and skills. So it's about recognizing knowledge holders. And so that's kind of an important part of knowledge, passing on knowledge over time. And that's always been happening in these places for thousands of years. Okay, so I'll talk to you a little bit about the different fellowships. There's associate fellowships are basically are for very early career sessional staff. That's the main target of those. For those of you who are early career but have taught for a while and have a little bit of a profile, you would normally apply for a fellowship. So a fellowship is around your immediate practice, essentially. So it's about what you do in your own course or unit. And it's about successes that you've had. So you kind of collect evidence around those. Senior fellowship is about leadership and about mentorship. So you do have to take that a step, and so that goes beyond your individual unit or course. So how have you helped others achieve things in learning and teaching? How have you helped to improve their practice? So that's kind of what a senior fellowship is about, and you do have to provide evidence of that. Normally, the ones that apply for senior fellowship that get knocked back tend to not supply enough evidence of leadership and mentorship. So that's kind of the key focus there. So at QUT we also have, and this is kind of fairly new, in the last couple of years it's been developed, and we have a lot of applications now, but it's called an Associate Fellow Indigenous, which it's similar to other associate fellowships. So you have to show a beginning practice in this area and a beginning evidence of success or successful implementation of something related to embedding Indigenous perspectives. So a lot of interest in that at QUT, and so because people can do that for free at QUT at the moment. The other types of fellowships you have to pay for. Kashmira was just telling me that at UNE you don't have to pay, so it's a good idea to take advantage of that, basically being free. In terms of benefits, at QUT, and I'm not sure exactly how that fits in with UNE, but it's directly integrated into the promotions process. So it's part of, so if you're going for academic promotion, for example, it's part of the teaching and learning element, not part of research. So having a fellowship or having a senior fellowship is counted as evidence of, like it's a tick on your on the learning and teaching element of your promotion application. Now, the other thing I should say is that a fellowship and a senior fellowships are recognition. So it's recognition for existing practice and evidence of existing practice. It's not a qualification. And that's an important distinction to make, because people often say when it comes to the assessment that it's easy to get. That's not actually true. It's not easy to get, but you are assessed on evidence. But it is not like it's not an accredited qualification. It's a recognition of practice, and it's an important distinction. But as soon as you can evidence your practice, there's no reason not to give you a fellowship, if you know what I mean. So that's an important thing. So what I'll do, are there any questions at this point? Because I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. No? Okay. So I'll share my screen, and the host has disabled participant screen sharing, so you will have to
Oh my God.
give me that access.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've just I've just actually assessed a whole lot of fellowships and senior fellowships at Griffith University. They have a large fellowship program there, which is kind of tied to their grad cert as well. So it's kind of the assessment in the grad cert that they have is aligned to AHE Fellowships and senior fellowships. So yeah. Okay, yeah. So let me just have a look and share my screen. Hang on. Sorry, I won't be long. There it is. So this is the old UK PSF. So this will be overtaken by the new PSF 2023, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But essentially, if you apply for an associate fellow, then you have to show evidence of success in 2 of the areas of activity rather than all 5. Right, so you can choose either teach and support learning and assess and give feedback to learners, or design and plan learning activities. So you can choose any of those 5. The other ones, you just kind of, so the core knowledge part and the professional values, you annotate as you do your application. So you kind of just put them in brackets. So for example, if you have a little discussion about what you do in assessment, as you go through, you kind of put in brackets K1, the subject material, or if you use technology in your assessment, then you put K4, use and value of learning technologies. And so your assessor knows which parts of these professional values and core knowledges you are evidencing, if that makes sense. I should also say that for those of you who are not used to this, the application process and the way you write about it is reflective writing. So you kind of so you use evidence-informed approaches, that's V3 there, and the outcomes from research and scholarship to inform what you do. So for example, if you say, like, in my assessment, I use authentic assessment, you then have to, like, you make your application a lot stronger if you back that up with a couple of references to research around authentic assessment, right? And that's what I mean by reflective writing. So you kind of justify your practice and you back that up by research evidence and scholarship evidence. That will strengthen your application no end. Now, the other thing you then do is you provide evidence in terms of how successful was it. So any kind of evidence you can find is appropriate. So if you get student feedback and students say, this was a really good assessment, or I really liked your teaching because of this, this, and this, you can use those quotes, and that's part of your evidence. if you have if you have numbers as well to back up what you do, that will make it even stronger. So, and particularly, and this is what I mean by reflective writing, if you say, when I first started teaching this course, these were the numbers, and students were struggling with this, this, and this. In response, I then decided to make changes. These are the changes that I made. A couple of references to scholarship and research that says that that's a good idea. And then if you can say like, then, you know, the student feedback improved significantly as a result of what I implemented, then you're starting to get a really, really strong application. The feedback that you get is often about any of these elements missing, right? So I often read applications that are full of quotes, like students' quotes, which are fine, but don't overdo it on the quotes, because the quotes are, you know, are cherry picking evidence. You only use the good quotes, right? So if you can back it up with some numbers about overall progress or student improvements, and any kind of evidence will do there, it will strengthen it. Okay, so this you can still apply currently with the UK PSF, which is from 2011. So this is the framework here. Now, there's Kate. Hello, Kate. I know Kate very well. Hang on, I'll just share the new PSF. So this is the new PSF, which will become relevant next year. Is that correct, Kashmira? Like from 2023, 24, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can do it this year as well, but from next year, they will not at all accept from 2011.
Okay. Yeah. So use this framework instead. It works exactly the same way, by the way. It's just that the idea with the new PSF, the main difference is that the advanced AHE has tried to make it more inclusive, which means for professional staff, non-academic staff, it's a lot more inclusive. So anything that you do to support learning and teaching will be easier to evidence in this new framework here. Many of it is still very similar and relatively the same, but they've changed the wording a little bit in different areas, so that and the idea is that will make it more inclusive. So hopefully that is actually the case. The tricky thing is that some of the wording has become very broad. So the initial feedback that I've heard is that it creates a little bit more discussion amongst assessors, which is interesting. And so this will probably be adjusted at some stage. But basically, the 5 areas there of activity are essentially the same, broadly the same, and the rules around associate fellowship, and senior fellowship are still the same as well. So if you apply for an associate fellowship, you only need to evidence 2 and pick 2 areas of activity. For fellowship, you need all 5 areas of activity. And for senior fellowship, you still need to do all 5 as well, plus you need to write 2 case studies separate. And that's the same, that is currently the same as well. again, for senior fellowship, the main emphasis is on mentorship and leadership. So that's the kind of distinguishing factor. So if you've done so if you have done initiatives or implemented initiatives across the university, or you've done things that involves colleagues from other faculties, for example, or even within your faculty, you do mentorship of other colleagues, then you can apply for a senior fellowship if you have enough evidence of success. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I was going to say about that. Now, for Kashmira said earlier that there are people that are thinking of applying for principal fellowship. That is quite a different story altogether. Like for principal fellowship, you do have to demonstrate leadership either across the sector or internationally. So this is about initiatives that that brings people together in the sector and gives you as an individual recognition of having led initiatives like that. And so, yeah, you do need a different level of evidence for that. So yeah, so finally, about the difference between fellowship and senior fellowship, like I said, I've done some assessment I've done quite a few applications last week for Griffith, and the ones that get knocked back, and when I say knocked back, they get a chance to resubmit, but they don't meet the standard at the moment, tend to be those who apply for senior fellowship, but they're essentially a fellowship application. So when I say leadership and mentorship, that goes beyond your own course or unit. So when you say when people say like I have weekly meetings with my sessional staff in my unit, and so I've mentored them, that is fine, but it is not enough for a senior fellowship. It kind of goes beyond your own area, right? Because it's basically seen as standard practice. So the leadership and mentorship in a senior fellowship application goes kind of beyond that. It kind of goes to your initiative beyond your own teaching context in mentoring others. Hope that makes sense. Okay, and I'll leave it there. I don't know, Jen. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I just have a question. So leadership in form of, let's say I'm a lecturer and I'm teaching my class and I have changed my practices based on whatever feedback and all that. So I have changed, my change impacted positively to my teaching, and of course, made difference in my students' learning outcomes and all that. So that is also like a form of leadership. So when it comes to senior fellowship, is it that level is enough, or I should say, okay, so my this practice now I shared at blah blah, and then few other of my colleagues are doing similar thing, and that is also making difference in their units.
It's the
So
latter, yeah. Yeah, so you have to kind of demonstrate that so that's the first, so what you've actually done in your unit, that is fellowship level recognition, right? So that in itself is enough at a fellowship level. Then if you go to senior fellowship, like if you've done like a webinar, for example, where you shared this practice and you can then show that others have taken up your initiative and have done that as well and have had success with it, or if you publish an article about it, you've done an evaluation and you publish an article or you do a conference paper, then that's another element of evidence that you're influencing others. So it's a form of leadership as well.
So how do you show the evidence? Like let's say I have presented in a webinar, but I cannot kind of comment on how many people that they attended the seminar will have, taken up this practice, or when they're taken up the practice, did that make any difference to their whatever in their situation? So how do you evidence that? Because people can say, oh, I presented this and that and that, and I see that some very few popular ones, they get invited everywhere, and they get the opportunity to talk just everywhere. So what other people who are like me, who's not popular, will do in terms
you're
of
very popular,
showing the evidence?
But yeah, that's a good question. It's not always easy. But if you basically, if you like the fact that you presented at a webinar and there was 20 people at the webinar or something, that is part of your evidence. It's one bit of evidence. Then if you know in your own institution people who have who have done similar things as a result of talking to you, or as a result of you working with them, or as a result of you giving them a bunch of resources related to it, any of those things are part of your evidence. And if you can then get them, if you're aware of people doing that, if you can then get them to write like a little testimonial, and it only has to be like a paragraph or so, then you can use that as part of your evidence. Yeah, and it's just a kind of like, it doesn't have to be, it's just as much as you can possibly get together, really, in each of the areas that you're applying for. Yeah. Janelle.
Thanks, Hank. That's a great overview. I just wanted to expand a little bit, and it was great that Kashmira actually talked about evidence. So you did mention about student surveys, and we all are very aware of student surveys of potentially 10% of your class actually responding to such things, and so therefore not the best way of actually evidencing your change. So my understanding, having gone through this, is because the assessor, there's a confidentiality agreement between the university and yourself, and therefore we can actually show student survey results, because that we can't publish those at UNE because we don't have that permission. So we can look at those, but I would be looking for as well in this evidence of, I made this initiative, what was the impact on my students? So was it that I've now got a grade point increase? Have I got or have I got retention that's higher? What is it that I've done? So in your experience, do you think that that is better? And I'm so pleased you said about cherry picking quotes, because yes, AAUT at the moment, just reading those of cherry picking. Yeah. So what I love to see is, which is what I have done previously, is to actually go, okay, here are all of the times out of the 200 responses, 55% of students say this about me, or about this intervention. Is that more what you're looking for in this HEA?
Yes, basically, yes. So, but you can still, even if you get 10% feedback on student evaluations, and I know it's really, really problematic, it still counts, right? So if you, yeah, so that's, don't completely dismiss it, just use it anyway. But yeah, but if you talk, but for example, attendance rates going up is a really strong indicator of, especially if you can show that it's gone up since you've done something specific. So you've implemented this thing in your class, or on your in your LMS site, and as a result, lots of students engaged with the videos that you've produced, or the quizzes that you've created, or anything like that. If you can use, if you can demonstrate that the numbers changed as a result, and if you can then back that up with a couple of cherry pick quotes that kind of give a little bit of a story to that, that's nice, you know. And that together then becomes really strong evidence, definitely. Christy.
Oh, thanks, Hank. It's been a really insightful discussion so far. My question was just in relation to, I guess, the structure of what we're working towards here. Like, it sounds as though it has some features in common with an AAUT citation, but at the same time has some differences, such as when you were mentioning like case studies and annotations, which seems like a little bit of a portfolio. So I was just wondering, how long is this piece of work that we're working towards, and also how many weeks or months usually do people undertake this over? What period of time?
Ooh, that's a good, that's a good question. It's a really good idea. Like, some people, I'm going to be really honest here. Some people don't take much time at all, and you can sometimes tell, not always, but you can do a bit of multi-purposing here. Like, it's like a teaching award, like an AAT application is quite different, but a lot of the evidence is kind of similar, right? So you can use, like, yeah, so if you start collecting evidence, if like at least 6 months out, I would say. And it's particularly what I said earlier about, you know, because you've got to collect, like, if you have evidence that something happened as a result of what you did, then you need to kind of collect that from the moment you did it. So you have a before and after kind of scenario, and that's definitely something you have to do in teaching award applications as well, a lot of. So in teaching award applications, they're usually looking over a period of 3 years. In a fellowship application, that is not a requirement. So in a sense, they're a bit easier. But I often say to people who, like, the feedback that we provide, even if people get a fellowship or a senior fellowship, is about reflective writing. It's about what I just said, like, you know, like so that if you do go for a teaching award application or a promotion, you need to be really, really rigorous about your evidence that you provide. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to get there. It's slightly easier with fellowships, but you still need to provide enough evidence, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you start 6 months out, I would say that you may be okay.
And I think, I mean, and then I don't have this fellowship, so I don't know whether I do at all. I have rights, but I am liaising with AHE a lot. So what they said, and I understand, is that when you start writing applications, then you will see that, okay, I don't have evidence for like K3 or, descriptor 5 or something. And then you try looking for those evidence in your work. So you say, okay, I want this evidence. So what can I do in my teaching that will create that evidence? And that's how it takes longer. But I think, so usually you think, okay, I have like 9 out of 10, all the evidences, but then I don't have this. But that without that, your application would definitely be not considered. So those are the kind of thing that you will need probably a semester or 2 to get those evidence back in your applications. And about the structure, at least I know senior fellowship requires 2 case studies,
Yes.
1,500 words each, right?
Yes.
And one narrative writing that is about 3,000 words. So altogether, the whole application is 6,000 words. So 2 case studies makes 3,000 words each, right? 1 case studies.
Yeah, that's like 1,500 words per case study. Yes.
So yeah, and then 3,000 words for narrative. Yeah. So
2.5.
2.5. Okay. So
That,
altogether
well,
it's like a
at Griffith, it's but usually 2.5, I think. Yeah. So about 500 words per area of activity.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, I'll just share my screen for a moment again. So in terms of your assessor, if you and this comes from an assessor, it's really good if you make it really easy on your assessor to to assess, right? So the areas of activity, there's 5 of them. If you organize them in 5 different sections that address each of them, that is a really good idea. It's not actually a requirement as such, which means that some people turn the whole thing into a flowing narrative that incorporates bits and pieces along the way, which is nice if it's well written, but most of the time it's not quite as nice because it's actually really difficult to figure out which area of activity are you addressing here. So my advice is just go A1 heading and then 500 words on that. A2 heading, 500 words on that. It's much easier to assess.
And Hank, I have one more question. Sorry, Christy, if it is related, you go ahead first.
Oh, sorry, just before we move on from that part, thanks for talking about the structure there. So for instance, if you had 5 times 500 word sections on those 5 areas of activity, then I guess that's sort of like the main spine of your narrative or your portfolio. And then within those little 500 word segments, is that where we need to link back to like the core knowledge and the
yes,
professional values?
Yeah, so you annotate that as you go along. So after each couple of sentences, you might put in brackets K, this addresses K3,
Okay. And do you need to have all of the values and knowledge annotated in each activity segment, or is it just natural that some areas would have more links than others?
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. Yes. No, you don't in each area of activity, but overall, you do need to tick them all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah. Yes, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say as well, it's not the most natural way of writing in some disciplines, is reflective writing. So if you kind of find this difficult, or if you don't even know what it looks like, then try and get someone to mentor you a bit, or get someone to give you a bit of feedback, like preferably someone who's familiar with fellowships, but anyone else is fine as well, as long as you kind of, because reflective writing is a skill and it's not easy to acquire if you've never done it before. The other thing I was going to say about, I was going to ask you actually, Kashmir, I don't know if at UNE you have the option of doing a dialogic route for senior fellowship. It basically means you don't have to write case studies, but you get a 45-minute conversation with a panel.
That's a great question. I don't know whether we have that, because I have not heard of anybody did that. But I can ask AHE in our meeting. Janelle, you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, that's how I did mine. So mine was based on my AAUT award plus a reflection under each of the criteria plus an interview with a panel. So there were 3 or 4, and then I think No, I think that was all. But yeah, we had already written reflective writing. But yes, Hank, thank you for mentioning reflective writing. Scientist here, succinct writing is the and so reflective writing. So being able to explain something was great. The other really good thing was that on the panel, I did have a scientist as one of the people who therefore understand your discipline and understand the way that as scientists it's as quickly as we say things as possible.
But it's even simple things like, you know, writing in the third person and stuff, and it's difficult for scientists, I know, to write about I did this or I did that. It goes against the grain. But I did a few I did a few dialogic ones in the last couple of weeks, and they're really good for people who are not great at reflective writing. And some people are just really good at talking through what they do or talking through their practice, you know. And the other benefit of it, if that's an option and if that applies to you, is that the panel will then probe you for more if you don't provide enough, you know. So it's not like a hardcore interview where we kind of interrogate you. It's more like it's a conversation about your practice, and if you're not providing enough evidence, we will just probe you a little bit, you know, and ask you for more. And so it's a good way of doing it if you prefer not to write long case studies. If you have that opportunity anyway, that's
And Janelle said we do, so we could explore that.
Well, we did. What I'm saying is we did, because this is a decade ago probably that I did mine. But the other thing I remember walking in with was a pile of evidence of photocopy, like a bit like you're going for a promotion application and you need to give all of this to your head of school. I walked in with this massive pile, to which I think they looked and went, And so I'm not sure if I was meant to do that, but I certainly had the evidence sitting there. And the other thing is the university, if you're using your AUT, the university's already checked that you had that evidence to be allowed to even submit. So there's that conversation, Kashmir, to have with the applicants.
And also we have funding already and contract with AHE that if you go on the path of writing your application, and if you're not confident about how you have presented your applications, then the draft application can be checked by a recognized assessor prior to your final submission, and they can provide you feedback, and we have that funding as well. But Hank,
I would fully recommend doing it as well, like, you know, because you do get, like, even if you're quite confident that yours is quite good, there's always, you know, you always get some feedback that says, oh, maybe a bit more emphasis here or something, and that helps.
But my question was like, because, you know, sometimes in my teaching or anywhere, sometimes I feel, oh, I am a bit too generous in giving marks or assessing people, as opposed to at times I think, oh my God, like why they have given so much marks? So I feel like I'm like harsher as compared to others. Now, so where does this subjectivity lies in AHE fellowship assessment?
That is a good question. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. So can you repeat the first bit?
I'm just saying, like between, I know for everybody's knowledge, how it works is like your application is sent to a few, I think 3 assessors or 2 assessors. And then they mark them and decide about whether you should be awarded the fellowship or not. And if it is a revision, then what are the points of revision? And then once individually done, they get together and have a calibration meeting. Am I right? Yeah. So there is a calibration meeting where they talk about, okay, I thought it is like this, and then so I think that subjectivity, that's the time when that subjectivity can be looked after. But I'm just thinking,
Yes.
sometimes I feel that I'm very lenient assessor in my students assessment or any other that I do. So how does that subjectivity of assessor reflects in how the applications are assessed?
Yes, no, I get what you're talking about now. So yeah, so so there's 3 assessors on every application, and then there's someone who runs the whole process. So even if you can't agree as 3 assessors, there'll be someone else who will then moderate it. If there's if there's disagreement, you kind of just let that person know, and then you get someone else to look over it as well. The things that sometimes happen is, and these are quite extreme cases, and this tends to happen when people haven't got a mentor or haven't had their application read. So this happened last week one time, and we were with one particular application, which was for senior fellow, and we just didn't think it was. We thought it was a perfectly fine application at the fellow level, but there was just no evidence of, what I was saying before, of going beyond their own course and unit. So as a panel, we just kind of thought like, well, this has to be rejected essentially. But then the other person that sits over the top, we just let them know that we were kind of thinking this can't be awarded. But then you still have to give the opportunity to make changes. So essentially what we then had to do is give very detailed feedback about why we didn't think it was at senior fellowship level. And then that person then gets 28 days to to make changes. What often happens in this case is probably that they won't, because we asked for a serious amount of evidence that wasn't there, and I'm not sure how you're going to do that within a month or collect that. So that happens. But basically, the panel of assessors, which is always 3, will work towards consensus. So we each individually write comments. We each individually make our assessment, and then there's a meeting, usually about half an hour or an hour meeting, and we talk through our comments. And if there's major differences, we kind of talk through what we overall as a panel think where it should sit. So yeah, there's pretty good calibration, I must say, and moderation.
And also about because we have at least I know that in here also we have a combination of purely academic as well as professional staff who are doing academic work as well. So
Yeah.
you have a combination of experience around, like, so for me, let's say I've like went between academic and professional position depending on how life was at that time for me. So when we're writing application, when you are kind of like both places, how do you center your application to, or how do you decide upon the themes, or how you are going to present yourself, especially in terms of like those values?
Well, you have like you have a very different kind of collection of evidence around, and your practice is different in relation to faculty academics. So you don't get teaching, for a start, you don't have student evaluations. But if you do things like if you do things like workshops, or you work with individual people, just make sure that you always send an email with a short evaluation of your work. If you get unsolicited emails, which professional staff often do, in my experience, like, if you work with someone, they often send you an email to thank you, and sometimes those are they're quite detailed about what they're thanking you for, and so that counts as evidence. But in other ways, it's similar to what to what applies to teaching staff. So if you've done an initiative, for example, if you're a learning technologist and you've created something that helps a whole lot of different people in their LMS site or something, then you can show evidence that as a result of what you've done, engagement with something has increased, or so it's a similar kind of thing. The other thing is, if you work in a central unit, you might have university leaders who are aware of the impact of what you've done. If you've won awards for something, like for service awards, all of those things can count as evidence. So yeah, and like I said, the new PSF professional standards framework is kind of broader, so it's designed to incorporate wider practice beyond just immediate teaching.
So my experience is that some people I have seen, and I have nothing against them, but like, if somebody said, "Oh, great," in Twitter, they will screenshot that, So some people go to like that level, and as opposed to some people, they just do things and they think that, that's fine, and I'm happy that it has impacted, positively to many people. So I think that's the critical point that probably from now that I have to do, is that making sure that I document in some way that where people can go and see that what are the different kind of evidence that they can collect, and where do they kind of like keep their eye open when they're teaching, then what they should be doing, or when they're professional staff, then what they should be doing, and all that. That would be helpful, it looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned Twitter, and there's also LinkedIn, and there's like people share practice there sometimes. Correct. And then sometimes that leads to a complete discussion around a particular thing that you have shared, that you do. That is evidence. Like if a lot of people outside of your institution engage with what you've done there, use that as evidence as well. Kate mentioned earlier that in the chat that there's things well, you do this, Kashmir, I know, but there's the like community mentorship program, things like that. You can use that as evidence of helping others, mentoring others, leading others. Christy.
Oh, thank you. Just one more question from me. I was wondering at UNE, because we're one of the member organisations, did you mention at the beginning that it was free for staff, or was I hearing things? And what do we do about taking next steps if we're interested as UNE staff members?
Yeah, so we have a contract with AHE, so Advanced AHE, now it is called, and we might... we have some money that we can use in any way we want it. So definitely, if you are preparing your application, university can pay for reviewing the draft, or going to if your application is ready, they will pay for the assessment. We are also trying to bring some people in from there to do online workshop, half day or maybe like 2 hours or something. So that is coming up next. So this year I wanted to do, but they said no point, because now we are moving on to other one. and I have kind of like had lots of material that I wanted to put somewhere in our like academic development website, where there are example applications of people. And it is in a public domain. They said Creative Commons, please use it. But now it is changing. So 2023 onwards. So we don't have kind of like any example applications, but we have all the support. So given that just the financial aspect and draft application, if you need any help, just contact me or academic development email, and then please just anything. So if we don't have it, I can find from somewhere from my network who can come in. Like I got Hank today. I have other lots of friends who are colleagues who are in other universities and who are assessors for a long time, and in different disciplines. So like for instance, medicine or something, so people can come in and help or maybe like mentor. I have lots of colleagues in Sydney University because they are self-accredited, so they do it within the institution. So I know so many people there who can mentor us. I'm also trying to put in my application, which I was writing, and I was advised that I shouldn't be doing in 2011 framework. I should be doing 2023, so that once I go through, I can help others as well. So yes, please just get to us in academic development, and we will organize whatever help you need.
Thank you, Kashmira. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a long answer to your short question, but yeah. So if there is any other questions, but you can always write to academic development if you have any other questions. And I can personally email you some examples of applications, but that's like 2011 PSF. Not much difference though. And I also have, I'm thinking early next year, I'll have a webinar. I do myself differentiating those things, such as like I have tried to just show you in a sec, like I just see this, you know, like core knowledge and all of that. So I'm also thinking that I will share it with everyone and see what are the difference between 2011 and 23, and try to get some successful applications. So yeah. I know our professional staff also, there are many who are interested even in fellow application at fellow level, and they are doing amazing job. So we will be, promoting all this from next year.
It's good, you know, it's a good recognition to get, because it's relatively, you know, it's relatively easy because it's just about your practice and what you already do essentially, and it's recognized everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not just in Australia or anything. If you want to go anywhere, people know what this is, so it helps.
And also it's not yet in the policy, but what I heard from the discussion, that we also would include having AHE Fellowship as part of the process for the promotion application. So because you have already provided evidence, and if you're like going from level B to C, and we say, okay, yep, they're already there, so that boxes are ticked. So and also there is one more thing that I want everybody to know, and whoever is listening, recording afterwards, is that we are it already exists, but we are trying to make it CSP for people. So we have grad cert in higher education, which is aligned to AHE. So what that means is that if you do those 4 units, and not only that you have grad cert, but also in the process, as a means of assessment, you will prepare your fellow or senior fellow applications, which can be then refined and submitted as AHE in to AHE for the fellowships. So But at the moment that grad cert is paid, and we are trying to get it as CSP for the staff, so it could come for free if you're interested. Okay, so if we don't have any questions, I have put academic development email in the chat as well. So any questions, please feel free to email us. And thank you for attending, and thank you, Hank, for taking time to kind of like, he was traveling to Netherlands and he just arrived last night, I guess, isn't it? So thank you for your
Yeah.
time and sharing your
I
expertise.
managed to stay awake, which is a testament to your engagement. Thank you.
Thanks, Hank and Kashmira. Much appreciated. Very useful workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, see you. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.